The air was thick with fear when two little girls no older than 6 ran barefoot into the middle of Cedar Street. Their pink dresses were torn and streaked with dirt, tiny feet bleeding from running across rough pavement. "Please help, Mama's hurt," Hazel cried out, her voice shaking with terror. Lily clutched a ripped teddy bear, tears cutting pale tracks through the grime on her cheeks. Cars slowed down. A woman in a business suit lowered her window, concern flashing across her face before she drove on. A delivery truck driver shook his head sympathetically but kept going. No one stopped. Until Jack Miller did. Jack's weathered pickup truck screeched to a halt so hard the tires left marks on the asphalt. He didn't think, didn't hesitate. His calloused hands abandoned the steering wheel as he threw the door open and jumped out, work boots hitting the pavement with heavy purpose. At 34, Jack wasn't young anymore, but the carpenter moved with the urgent speed of someone who understood emergency. "Where is she?" Jack knelt beside the trembling twins, his voice gentle but firm. His blue eyes met theirs steadily, an anchor in their storm of fear. Hazel, the slightly taller one, pointed a shaking finger toward a narrow alleyway between two old brick buildings. "In there, Mama fell." Jack squeezed their shoulders reassuringly. "Stay right here, I'll get her." He straightened up and ran toward the alley, the sounds of his heavy footsteps fading as he disappeared into the shadows. The alley was narrow and dark, filled with the scent of burnt oil and garbage. A single light bulb flickered overhead, illuminating a scene of chaos. Shelves had collapsed from a back storage area, and beneath a tangle of metal and wood lay a woman. Her long dark hair was matted with dust, her face pale against the concrete floor. Jack dropped to his knees beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" His fingers pressed gently against her wrist, finding a pulse, weak but present. Her eyelids fluttered. "My girls," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're safe," Jack said firmly. "Just stay still." He surveyed the scene quickly, assessing the massive wooden beam pinning her down. Years of construction work had taught Jack to calculate weight and leverage instinctively. This wasn't good. The beam was solid oak, at least 100 pounds, and one wrong move could shift more debris onto her. Jack braced his shoulder beneath the beam, legs planted firmly. His muscles screamed in protest as he pushed upward. The wood groaned but refused to budge. Sweat beaded on his forehead, running down his temples as he strained harder. "Come on," he muttered through gritted teeth. With one final surge of strength, Jack heaved the beam aside. It crashed against the wall as he knelt beside the woman again. Her breathing was shallow, her right leg bent at an unnatural angle. "I've got you," Jack said softly. "I'm going to get you out of here." Gently, he slid one arm under her shoulders and the other beneath her knees, lifting her as carefully as possible. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless in his arms, as he carried her through the narrow passage toward daylight. Her head rested against his chest, dark hair spilling over his worn work jacket. When Jack emerged from the alley, a small crowd had gathered him. Hazel and Lily rushed forward, little hands grabbing at their mother's clothes. "Mommy," they cried in unison. "Someone call an ambulance," Jack said firmly, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the onlookers. A teenager already had his phone out. "They're on the way." Jack knelt carefully, still holding the woman, keeping her elevated from the cold ground. The twins pressed against his sides, their small bodies shaking with sobs. "What's your name?" Jack asked the woman as her eyes fluttered open again. "Kate," she whispered. "Catherine Reynolds." "You're going to be okay, Catherine. Help is coming." Jack's voice carried the same steady assurance he used with his son when nightmares struck. "Your girls are right here. They're brave little ones." In the distance, sirens wailed. Catherine's hand found Jack's wrist, her fingers surprisingly strong as they gripped him. "Thank you," she murmured, before her eyes closed again. Minutes later, paramedics loaded Catherine onto a stretcher. As they prepared to lift her into the ambulance, Lily grabbed Jack's hand. "Are you coming with us?" Jack hesitated. He had a job to finish, a client expecting him back at the Johnson residence where he'd been installing custom cabinets. His 8-year-old son Tyler would be waiting at after-school care, expecting to be picked up at 5 sharp. But the terror in those little girls' eyes made the decision for him. "Yes," he said, "I'll follow in my truck." At Memorial Hospital, Jack sat in a vinyl chair, his tall frame uncomfortable in the small waiting room seat. His phone was pressed to his ear as he called his client to apologize for the unfinished job. The twins had finally fallen asleep, one on each side of him, their heads resting against his arms like they'd known him forever. I understand, Mr. Johnson. I'll be there first thing tomorrow to finish up. Yes, sir. I appreciate it. He ended the call, then dialed his neighbor, Mrs. Winters, explaining the situation and asking if she could pick up Tyler from after-school care and keep him until Jack got home. At 72, Mrs. Winters had been a godsend since Sarah died 2 years ago, stepping in whenever Jack's single-dad juggling act faltered. A nurse approached quietly, clipboard in hand. Mr. Miller. Just Jack, he corrected automatically. How is she? Ms. Reynolds is stable. Broken leg, 3 cracked ribs, and a mild concussion. She's very lucky. That beam could have done much worse. The nurse glanced at the sleeping girls. She's been asking for her daughters and for the man who rescued her. Jack gently disentangled himself from the twins, who stirred but didn't wake. I should probably call child services or someone. She's awake and alert. You can bring the girls in when they wake up. The nurse smiled. She said to tell you that angels come in work boots too. Jack felt his face warm. I'm no angel, just happened to be driving by. The fluorescent hospital lights hummed overhead as Jack followed the nurse down the corridor. Room 214 was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Catherine Reynolds looked fragile against the white hospital sheets, her face pale but her eyes alert. You stayed, she said when she saw Jack in the doorway. He shifted his weight, suddenly aware of his dusty jeans and the torn sleeve of his work shirt. Your girls fell asleep in the waiting room. I didn't want to leave them alone. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I don't even know your name. Jack Miller. He remained by the doorway, hands in his pockets. Where are my daughters? Sleeping, the nurse said I can bring them in when they wake up. Jack hesitated. They're safe. Not a scratch on them except for some cut-up feet from running without shoes. Catherine tried to shift in the bed and winced. The doctor says if that beam had fallen just 3 inches to the left. She trailed off, then looked back at Jack with intensity. You saved my life. How can I ever repay you? Jack shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same. A sad smile crossed her face. But they didn't, did they? All those people drove right past my girls. Jack had no answer for that. He looked down at his boots scuffed from years of construction, sites, and carpentry work. What do you do, Jack Miller, when you're not rescuing people from collapsed buildings? I'm a carpenter, own a small shop across town. Nothing fancy. Custom cabinets, furniture repair, that kind of thing. He ran a hand through his dark hair, conscious of the sawdust that probably fell from it. I was on my way to finish a job when I saw your girls. A carpenter, she repeated softly. My father was a carpenter. Jack nodded, not sure what to say next. There was something about Catherine Reynolds that seemed familiar, though he was certain they'd never met. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity she maintained despite her injuries, or the way her eyes kept drifting toward the door looking for her daughters. Do you have children? She asked suddenly. A son, Tyler, he's 8. Jack's expression softened. He's with a neighbor right now, probably talking her ear off about dinosaurs or space rockets. Catherine smiled, a real smile this time that transformed her face. Hazel and Lily are 6, twins obviously. They're usually not so brave. I'm proud of them for finding help. Jack nodded. You should be. Most adults wouldn't have kept that clear ahead in an emergency. A small sound from the doorway interrupted them. Hazel stood there, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. When she saw her mother, she ran forward with a cry. Jack lifted her onto the edge of the bed, careful to position her away from Catherine's injuries. Mommy, you're okay. Catherine enfolded her daughter with her good arm. Yes, baby, I'm okay. Where's your sister? Still asleep. I didn't wake her. Hazel looked at Jack with solemn eyes. You found Mommy. I did, Jack smiled. You were very brave to get help. Hazel studied him seriously. Are you a superhero? Jack chuckled. No, just a regular guy. I should go check on your sister. As he turned to leave, Catherine called after him. Jack. Thank you. Truly. He nodded once and stepped out, closing the door quietly behind him. Back in the waiting room, Lily was beginning to stir. When she saw Jack, she reached for him immediately, and he marveled at how children could trust so completely so quickly. Is Mommy okay? She's fine. Your sister is already with her. Want to go see? She nodded, slipping her small hand into his calloused one as they walked down the hallway. After reuniting Lily with her mother and sister, Jack knew it was time to go. He had responsibilities waiting. Tyler work deadlines, bills to pay. The hospital room was filled with the Reynolds family's relieved chatter, and he felt like an intruder in their private moment. "I should head out," he said from the doorway. "Glad you're going to be okay, Ms. Reynolds." "Kate," she corrected. "Please call me Kate." "Kate," he nodded. "Take care of yourself and those brave girls of yours." Lily scrambled off the bed and ran to wrap her arms around Jack's legs. "Thank you for saving Mommy." Jack patted her head awkwardly. "You're welcome, kiddo." As he drove home through the gathering dusk, Jack's thoughts remained with the Reynolds family. There had been something in Kate's eyes. Not just gratitude, but a flicker of recognition, as if they shared some unspoken understanding. Perhaps it was simply that they were both single parents. He'd noticed no wedding ring on her finger, heard no mention of a husband. Jack's own wedding band remained in his dresser drawer, removed 6 months after Sarah died when the weight of it became too much to bear. 2 years had passed since cancer took her, leaving him with medical bills, a mortgage he could barely afford, and an 8-year-old boy who still sometimes cried for his mother in the night. The porch light was on at his modest ranch-style home, and Mrs. Winter's station wagon sat in the driveway. As Jack pulled up, Tyler burst through the front door and ran down the steps. "Dad, Mrs. Winters let me have 2 cookies after dinner, and I built a huge fort in the living room," and he stopped, noticing the dirt and dust covering his father. "What happened?" "Did something fall at work?" Jack lifted his son in a tight hug, suddenly overwhelmed with gratitude that Tyler was safe, healthy here. "No, buddy, I just helped someone who was hurt, that's all. I'll tell you about it later." Mrs. Winters appeared in the doorway, arms crossed over her cardigan. "Quite the excitement from what Tyler tells me. Are you all right, Jack?" "I'm fine, thank you for watching him." "Any time." She waved away his thanks. "That's what neighbors are for. Tyler already finished his homework, and I've left some pot roast in your refrigerator." After Mrs. Winters left, Jack and Tyler sat at their small kitchen table. Between bites of reheated pot roast, Jack told a simplified version of the afternoon's events, careful to avoid the scarier details. "So you really did save her life," Tyler said, eyes wide. "Like a superhero." Jack laughed. Her daughter said the same thing. "But I'm no hero, Ty. I just happened to be there." "Mom would say you did good," Tyler said quietly. Jack felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, she would." Later, after Tyler was bathed and tucked into bed with a chapter of Harry Potter read aloud their nightly ritual, Jack sat at the kitchen table with his account books open before him. The numbers refused to balance. Too many expenses, not enough income. The medical bills from Sarah's treatment still loomed large despite Jack's efforts to chip away at them month by month. The custom cabinet business was steady, but not booming. He charged $45 an hour, less than most in the area, partly because he couldn't bring himself to raise rates on long-time clients, many of whom were struggling themselves. The Johnson job would bring in enough to cover this month's mortgage, but what about next month and the one after that? Jack closed the ledger with a sigh. Tomorrow would bring another day of work, another opportunity to stay afloat. He tried to focus on the positives. Tyler was healthy, they had a roof over their heads, and today he'd made a difference in someone's life. That counted for something. 3 weeks passed in a blur of routine. Jack finished the Johnson job and moved on to a built-in bookcase for the Petersons, followed by porch repairs for elderly Mrs. Donovan, who insisted on paying him partly in homemade apple pies. Tyler had a science project due, which meant late nights constructing a solar system model that threatened to take over their entire living room. The Reynolds family faded to the back of Jack's mind, a brief, intense encounter overshadowed by the demands of daily life, until a silver Mercedes pulled into the gravel lot beside his workshop one Tuesday afternoon. Jack was sanding down a cherry wood table when the car door opened and Kate Reynolds stepped out. She moved carefully, a walking cast on her right leg and a cane in her left hand. Behind her, Hazel and Lily emerged, each holding small bouquets of wildflowers tied with ribbon. For a moment, Jack just stared. Kate looked different, taken, stronger, more vibrant. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore a simple white blouse and jeans. The hospital pallor had been replaced by healthy color in her cheeks. He set down his sander and wiped his hands on a rag, suddenly conscious of the sawdust covering his clothes and probably his hair too. "Ms. Reynolds." "Kate," she corrected, smiling. "We've been looking for you." Jack stepped out from behind the workbench. How did you find me? Cedar Street Carpentry isn't hard to locate. She gestured to the sign hanging above his workshop door. Plus, Hazel remembered the name on your truck. The twins ran forward holding out their flowers. These are for you, Mr. Jack, Lily announced. Jack crouched down to accept the bouquets, genuinely touched. Thank you. That's very kind. We picked them ourselves, Hazel added proudly, from our garden. Jack looked back at Kate, who was watching the interaction with a soft expression. How are you feeling? Better every day. The doctors say I'm healing faster than expected. She shifted her weight, obviously still uncomfortable. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Jack glanced at his watch. He'd promised to pick up Tyler by 4, which gave him about an hour. Sure, it's not much, but I've got a small office in the back if you'd like to sit down. The office was really just a corner of the workshop with a desk and a couple of chairs, but Jack quickly cleared off stacks of invoices and sketches to make room. The twins immediately gravitated toward his drafting table, fascinated by the blueprints and technical drawings. Can we color? Lily asked. Jack found some blank paper and pencils, setting the girls up at the far end of the drafting table where they could draw while the adults talked. Kate lowered herself carefully into the chair Jack offered, setting her cane against the desk. I wanted to thank you properly, she began. The hospital was, well, not the best place for a real conversation. No thanks necessary, Jack said automatically. I'm just glad you're recovering. Kate studied him for a moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. You know, when I woke up in that alley and saw you there, I thought I was hallucinating. People don't just appear when you need them most. Jack shrugged uncomfortably. I was just driving by at the right time. Maybe, she smiled, or maybe there's more to it than that. She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. I'd like to show my appreciation. Jack held up a hand, already shaking his head. I can't accept money for helping someone in trouble. That's not how I operate. It's not charity, Kate said firmly. Consider it a thank you gift. I appreciate the gesture, but really it's not necessary. Jack's pride was a living thing, fierce and protective. Since Sarah's death, he'd refused handouts from well-meaning friends and family, determined to stand on his own 2 feet no matter how difficult. Kate didn't push, simply returning the envelope to her purse. You're a stubborn man, Jack Miller. So I've been told. The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. Kate glanced around the workshop, taking in the orderly tools hanging on pegboards, the projects in various stages of completion. You do beautiful work. How long have you been a carpenter? 15 years professionally. Learned from my father before that. Jack relaxed, slightly more comfortable discussing his craft than himself. He built houses. I prefer the detail work. Furniture cabinetry. My father was the same way, Kate said. He could spend days on a single table getting every joint and curve exactly right. For a few minutes, they talked about woodworking, different techniques, types of wood, the satisfaction of creating something lasting. Jack found himself warming to the conversation, surprised by Kate's knowledge and genuine interest. So, she said finally, will you at least let me hire you for a job? I need some bookshelves built at my home, and my office could use new cabinets. Jack considered the offer. Work was work, and he could use the income. I'd need to see the space, take measurements, and my schedule's pretty full right now. Of course, Kate smiled. I don't want special treatment, just the opportunity to give you business instead of someone else. Before Jack could respond, his phone rang. Tyler's school. He excused himself to answer it. Mr. Miller, this is Ms. Patel from Cedar Elementary. Tyler's running a fever, and we need you to pick him up as soon as possible. Jack's heart sank. A sick child meant missed work days, which meant lost income. I'll be right there, he promised, ending the call. Kate had overheard. Your son is ill. Fever, I need to go get him. Jack ran a hand through his hair, mentally rearranging his schedule. The Donovan porch would have to wait another day. I've kept you too long, Kate said, rising carefully. Girls, time to go. As they walked to their respective vehicles, Kate handed Jack a business card. Call me about those bookshelves when you have time. Jack took the card, tucking it into his pocket without looking at it. I will. Thanks for the flowers, he added to the twins, who beamed up at him. It wasn't until later that night, with Tyler finally asleep after a dose of children's Tylenol, that Jack examined the card. It was elegant but simple. Catherine Reynolds, CEO, Reynolds Logistics. Jack stared at it in shock. Reynolds Logistics was one of the largest shipping and transport companies in the state. Its headquarters dominated the skyline downtown, a gleaming glass tower that represented wealth and power Jack could barely comprehend. Kate Reynolds wasn't just any single mother. She was one of the most successful businesswomen in the city. Jack set the card on his nightstand, unsure what to make of this revelation. The Catherine Reynolds he'd met seemed grounded, unpretentious, not the corporate titan he'd expect. Why would someone like her seek out a small-time carpenter like him for work she could easily assign to a high-end contractor? Tyler's fever spiked during the night. By morning, Jack was calling clients to reschedule appointments, prepared for several days of caring for his sick child. Mrs. Donovan was understanding as always. Mr. Peterson less so, reminding Jack of the deadline they'd agreed upon. "I'll still meet it," Jack promised, knowing it would mean late nights once Tyler was better. By afternoon, Tyler was sleeping fitfully on the living room sofa, surrounded by blankets and stuffed animals. Jack sat at the kitchen table, sketching designs for the Peterson bookcase while keeping one ear alert for his son. The house was quiet except for the occasional turning of pages and the soft sound of Tyler's breathing. A knock at the door startled him. Jack wasn't expecting anyone, and unannounced visitors were rare in their neighborhood. He opened the door to find Kate Reynolds on his porch, a canvas bag in her hand. The silver Mercedes was parked at the curb, the twins visible in the back seat. "Kate," Jack's surprise was evident in his voice. "How did you—" "Small town," she said with a smile. "I asked around. I hope you don't mind." Jack glanced back at Tyler on the sofa. "My son is sick. It's not a good time for a visit." "I know. That's why I'm here." She held up the bag. Homemade chicken soup, popsicles, and children's books the girls thought Tyler might like. Jack was speechless. After a moment, he stepped back to let her in. "That's very kind of you." Kate limped slightly as she entered her cast, making soft thumping sounds against the hardwood floor. She took in the modest living room with its worn but clean furniture, the wall of photos featuring Tyler at various ages, and the small trophy shelf displaying his son's academic awards. Tyler stirred at the sound of voices, blinking groggily. "Dad!" "Hey, buddy." Jack moved to sit beside him. "We have a visitor. This is Ms. Reynolds. I told you about her, remember?" Tyler pushed himself up slightly, his cheeks flushed with fever. "The lady you rescued." Kate smiled as she set the bag on the coffee table. "That's right, and I brought you some soup and books because I heard you weren't feeling well." Tyler regarded her curiously. "Thank you. Are you better now?" "Dad said you broke your leg." "Almost better. See my special boot." She tapped her cast. 4 more weeks and it comes off." Jack watched the interaction with a mixture of emotions. Gratitude for Kate's thoughtfulness warred with discomfort at having her in his home. Their small, ordinary home that must seem shabby compared to wherever someone of her status lived. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly as Tyler examined the books Kate had brought. "I wanted to." She met his gaze directly. "When my girls are sick, I'm grateful for any help that comes my way. Single parenting isn't easy even under the best circumstances." Jack couldn't argue with that. "Would you like some coffee?" In the kitchen, while water boiled for instant coffee, all Jack had to offer, he found himself confessing about Sarah. Cancer, 2 years ago. It was fast. Diagnosed in March, gone by August. Kate's expression softened with genuine empathy. "I'm so sorry, Jack. That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you." Tyler took it hard. He was only 6 too young to really understand what was happening. "Some days I'm not sure he understands even now." Jack poured hot water into mugs, the memory of those dark days still sharp. "The hospital bills almost buried us, but we're managing." "And how are you managing?" Kate's question was gentle but direct. Jack stirred sugar into his coffee, buying time before answering. "One day at a time. The work helps, creating things, fixing things, and Tyler keeps me grounded." "I understand more than you might think," Kate said. "I'm divorced, not widowed, but I know what it's like to suddenly become everything to your children. Provider, protector, both parents in one." Jack nodded, surprised by how easily they'd slipped into such personal conversation. "Your ex-husband isn't involved with the girls." A shadow crossed Kate's face. "By his choice, not mine. He has a new family now on the West Coast." Jack recognized pain when he saw it, knew better than to press further. Instead, he asked about her company, curious about the woman behind the CEO title. Reynolds Logistics was my father's company originally, Kate explained. He built it from nothing, one truck, one driver. That driver was him. Her expression softened with memory. He used to take me on routes sometimes, let me ride in the big rig. I thought it was the greatest adventure. And now you run the whole operation. For the past 5 years, after Dad retired, I took over. There was pride in her voice, but also wariness. It's challenging. The industry is still very male-dominated. I have to work twice as hard to earn half the respect. Jack could imagine it. Board meetings full of men in expensive suits, questioning every decision Kate made simply because she was a woman. The thought bothered him more than it should have. They carried their coffee back to the living room, where Tyler had fallen asleep again, one of the new books open on his chest. Kate checked her watch. I should go. The girls are waiting in the car with my assistant. At the door, Kate paused. Jack, I meant what I said about the bookshelves, but there's something else I'd like to discuss with you once Tyler is feeling better. A business proposition. Business proposition. Reynolds Logistics is starting a new community initiative. We're looking for someone to lead it. Someone with your skills and perspective. She held up a hand as Jack began to protest. Just think about it. No pressure, no obligations. When Tyler's well, call me. After she left, Jack heated the soup Kate had brought. The rich aroma filled the small kitchen, a gesture of kindness that meant more than she could know. As a single father, Jack rarely experienced the simple comfort of someone else preparing food for his family. That night, as Tyler slept peacefully, his fever finally broken, Jack sat on the porch swing Sarah had loved so much. The business card Kate had given him lay in his palm, its embossed lettering catching the porch light. A business proposition. From a woman who lived in a different world than his. A CEO whose company probably made more in a day than Jack earned in a year. Jack tucked the card into his shirt pocket. Whatever Kate Reynolds was offering, he wasn't sure he was ready to hear it. His life was complicated enough without adding more uncertainty. But as he watched the stars emerge in the clear night sky, Jack couldn't deny the small flicker of curiosity, or the strange sense that his encounter with Kate Reynolds might be more than simple coincidence, as if something larger than both of them had set their paths to cross for a reason he couldn't yet see. In the distance, a train whistle sounded, long and mournful, echoing across the sleeping town. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the weight of single fatherhood, financial struggle, and unexpected connection press upon him equally. Tomorrow would bring another day of work, another set of challenges. But for tonight, at least his son was healing, his home was peaceful, and somewhere across town, a woman he'd saved was thinking of a way to return the favor, whether Jack wanted her to or not. The carpenter sighed, running his thumb along the grain of the wooden porch swing. Some materials resisted shaping, he knew from experience, and some were destined to become something entirely different from what you first imagined. Tyler's fever lingered for 3 days, forcing Jack to reschedule most of his work commitments. By Thursday morning, when his son finally bounced back with the resilient energy only children possess, Jack faced a backlog that would require late nights and weekend work to clear. The Peterson bookcase deadline loomed like an approaching storm. Can I go back to school tomorrow? Tyler stood in the kitchen doorway, color returned to his cheeks, dinosaur pajamas rumpled from sleep. Jack flipped a pancake, the familiar routine of breakfast preparation, steadying his worried thoughts about finances. If your temperature stays normal today, then yes. Good. We're starting our volcano project tomorrow, and Jacob says his dad is helping him make one that actually explodes. Tyler climbed onto a kitchen stool, his small face suddenly serious. Dad, why did that lady bring us soup? Jack set a plate of pancakes in front of his son. Because that's what people do sometimes when someone was sick. They help out. But we don't even know her. I helped her when she was hurt. Remember, maybe she wanted to return the favor. Tyler considered this while drowning his pancakes in syrup. She seemed nice, and she has 2 girls, right? Are they my age? A bit younger, they're twins, both 6. Jack checked his watch, calculating how many hours he could work today if Mrs. Winters agreed to watch Tyler after her book club. Can we have a play date with them? The innocent question caught Jack off guard. I don't think so, buddy. Ms. Reynolds she's very busy with her company. And we're busy too, especially now that I have to catch up on work. Tyler's face fell slightly, but he nodded with the solemn understanding of a child who had learned early that disappointment was part of life. The expression twisted something in Jack's chest, a familiar ache of failing to provide the normal childhood experiences his son deserved. After breakfast, a call to Mrs. Winters confirmed she could watch Tyler for the afternoon. Jack dropped his son off with promises of pizza for dinner if he behaved, then headed to the Peterson residence to begin work on their long-delayed bookcase. The elegant Victorian home made Jack acutely conscious of his worn work boots and the scratched toolbox he'd inherited from his father. Martha Peterson greeted him with the strained politeness of someone who had been inconvenienced and wasn't quite ready to forgive. "We were hoping to have this completed before our dinner party on Saturday, Mr. Miller." She led him to the library, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floors. Jack surveyed the space where the custom floor-to-ceiling bookcase would stand. "I'll have it finished by Saturday morning. I apologize for the delay. My son was ill." Martha's expression softened marginally. "Yes, well, children do come first. Just please ensure it's ready in time. Richard's colleagues from the university will be here, and we want the library to make the right impression." The subtle emphasis on impression wasn't lost on Jack. The Petersons, like many of his clients, hired him because his craftsmanship was exceptional, but his rates were lower than the high-end contractors who catered to the truly wealthy. They wanted the quality without the price tag. For the next several hours, Jack lost himself in the rhythm of work, measuring twice, cutting once, the satisfaction of precise joints and smooth edges. The cherry wood was expensive and unforgiving of mistakes, but Jack's hands knew their purpose. This was the language he spoke most fluently, the conversation between craftsman and material. At 4 o'clock, his phone rang. The display showed a number he didn't recognize, but he answered anyway, always vigilant about calls that might be Tyler's school. "Jack Miller." "Jack, it's Catherine Reynolds." Her voice carried the clear, confident tone he remembered. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." Jack set down his sander dust motes, dancing in the afternoon light, streaming through the library windows. "I'm at a client's home, but I cannot talk for a minute. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I wanted to check on Tyler. Is he feeling better?" The genuine concern in her voice surprised him. "Much better, thanks. Back to his usual energy level. And thank you for the soup. It really helped." "I'm glad." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. "Listen, I was wondering if you'd had time to consider my offer about discussing a business proposition." Jack glanced around the Petersons' library, aware that Martha might return at any moment. "I've been swamped catching up on work. Could we talk about this next week?" "Of course." If Kate was disappointed, she hid it well. "Actually, that might work out better. Reynolds Logistics is hosting a community appreciation dinner this Saturday evening. It would be the perfect opportunity to introduce you to what we're trying to do." This Saturday, Jack thought of his packed schedule, the Peterson job, the porch repairs for Mrs. Donovan Tyler's weekend. As if reading his thoughts, Kate added, "Please bring Tyler. There will be other children in there, including Hazel and Lily. It's a family-friendly event." Jack found himself wavering. A part of him, the proud, independent part that had carried him through the darkest days after Sarah's death, wanted to refuse. But curiosity tugged at him, along with the practical awareness that networking with someone of Kate's status could lead to more work. "I'll check my schedule and let you know," he said finally. "Perfect. It's at the Grand Hotel downtown starting at 7. Business casual is fine." Kate's tone warmed. "I think you'll find the evening worthwhile, Jack. What we're building could use someone with your particular skills." After they hung up, Jack returned to his work with renewed intensity, but his mind kept circling back to Kate's invitation. The Grand Hotel was the most expensive venue in Cedar Creek, a place Jack had never entered, except once to repair antique furniture in the lobby. The thought of attending a corporate function there with Tyler in tow filled him with a mixture of apprehension and a strange, unexpected excitement. By the time Jack picked up Tyler from Mrs. Winter's apartment, his decision was made. They would attend, not because Jack was interested in Kate's business proposition, he told himself, but because Tyler deserved a night out, a break from their routine of modest meals and early bedtimes. A fancy party with real rich people. Tyler's eyes widened when Jack explained their Saturday plans over pizza that evening. Jack wiped tomato sauce from his son's chin. It's not about whether people are rich or not, Ty. It's just a dinner where Ms. Reynolds wants to talk about a community project. Will there be chocolate fountain? Tyler's priorities remain firmly 8-year-old appropriate. Jack laughed, ruffling his son's hair. I have no idea, but you'll need to wear your good clothes, the ones from Aunt Jenny's wedding. Saturday arrived with the frantic pace of too many obligations compressed into too few hours. Jack completed the Peterson bookcase by noon, earning a grudging compliment from Richard Peterson and the full payment they'd agreed upon. He deposited the check, immediately relieved to see his bank balance temporarily restored to a less precarious level. The afternoon disappeared in a blur of errands and preparations. Jack's business casual options were limited to one decent pair of navy slacks and a light blue button-down shirt he saved for parent-teacher conferences. He ironed both with care, then helped Tyler into his own small dress pants and collared shirt. We look like those guys on TV who sell houses, Tyler observed as they stood side by side in the bathroom mirror. Jack adjusted his son's collar, noting with a pang how the pants were already getting short. Tyler was growing too fast, another expense looming on the horizon. Is that good or bad? Good, I guess, but your shoes are all scuffed up. Jack glanced down at his only dress shoes, worn at the heels and bearing the marks of many years of use. They'll have to do. The Grand Hotel rose like a monument to opulence in the center of downtown Cedar Creek, its limestone facade illuminated by tasteful spotlights as dusk settled over the city. Jack parked his truck, conspicuous among the luxury vehicles filling the lot, and took Tyler's hand as they approached the entrance. Remember what we talked about, Jack murmured, as they passed through the revolving door into a lobby of marble and crystal. Best behavior, please, and thank you, and if you need anything, tell me quietly. Tyler nodded, his eyes wide as he took in the enormous chandelier and the well-dressed attendees milling about. Dad, he whispered loudly, everyone looks super rich. Before Jack could respond, a voice called his name. Kate Reynolds crossed the lobby toward them, elegant in a simple black dress that somehow looked more expensive than anything Jack had seen in department store windows. Her walking cast had been replaced with a medical boot, less cumbersome, but still a reminder of their first meeting. Jack, Tyler, I'm so glad you could come. She bent slightly to address Tyler directly. My daughters have been asking about you all day. They're in the children's area with the other kids if you'd like to join them. Tyler glanced up at Jack for permission. Go ahead, buddy. I'll be right here. Jack watched as his son followed a hotel staff member toward a separate room where the sounds of children's laughter spilled into the hallway. Alone with Kate, Jack felt acutely self-conscious of his department store clothes and scuffed shoes. Nice venue. It serves the purpose. We want the community to see that Reynolds Logistics values them. Kate gestured toward the main ballroom. I'd like to introduce you to a few people before dinner, if that's all right. The next hour passed in a blur of handshakes and conversations that left Jack increasingly confused about why he'd been invited. Kate introduced him to city council members, business leaders, and philanthropists, people whose world intersected with Jack's only when they needed shelves built or furniture repaired. Through it all, Kate stayed close, her hand occasionally touching his arm to guide him through the crowd. Each time, Jack felt a jolt of awareness that both unsettled and intrigued him. So you're the hero Catherine has been talking about. An older man with silver hair and sharp eyes extended his hand to Jack. Robert Blake, Vice President of Operations at Reynolds. Kate tells me you saved her life. Jack shook the offered hand, noting the expensive watch and custom suit. I just happened to be there when she needed help. Nothing heroic about it. Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. Catherine sees it differently. She's been quite enthusiastic about your potential involvement with our community initiative. I don't actually know much about the initiative yet. No. Robert raised an eyebrow, glancing toward Kate, who was greeting another group of guests nearby. Interesting. Well, I'm sure she'll fill you in when she's ready. Catherine always has her reasons. The way he said her name with a mixture of respect and something that might have been resentment caught Jack's attention. There was history there, tension beneath the corporate courtesy. Robert took a sip of his champagne. What exactly do you do, Mr. Miller? I'm a carpenter, custom furniture, cabinetry, structural repairs. Ah, a tradesman. The slight emphasis made the word sound less than complimentary. And how do you know our Catherine beyond the rescue? Jack bristled at the condescension in Robert's tone. My son was sick. She brought soup. Robert's eyebrows rose higher. Did she? How domestic of her. He checked his watch. If you'll excuse me, I should greet the mayor. Enjoy the party, Mr. Miller. I'm sure we'll speak again. As Robert walked away, Kate returned to Jack's side. I see you met Robert. Is he always that charming? Jack kept his voice low, aware of the other guests nearby. Kate's laugh was soft but genuine. Robert takes some getting used to. He's brilliant with logistics, but struggles with actual human beings. She glanced toward the entrance. The final guests are arriving. We should find our table for dinner. The ballroom had been transformed into a vision of elegance. White tablecloths, centerpieces of fresh flowers, crystal glassware catching the light from chandeliers overhead. Jack followed Kate to a table near the front, where Tyler was already seated between Hazel and Lily, deep in conversation about something that had all three children giggling. Jack took his assigned seat beside Kate, hyper-aware of the fine china and multiple forks laid out before him. From this vantage point, he could see most of the room filled with Cedar Creek's elite in expensive clothes making expensive small talk. He felt like an imposter waiting to be exposed. Kate must have sensed his discomfort. She leaned closer, her perfume subtle but distracting. Overwhelmed? A bit. This isn't exactly my usual Saturday night. Mine either, to be honest. I'd rather be at home in sweatpants with the girls watching a movie. The image surprised him. Team, CEO Catherine Reynolds in sweatpants eating popcorn with her daughters. It humanized her in a way that made it harder for Jack to maintain emotional distance. Dinner was served, some kind of fish that Tyler eyed suspiciously until Jack encouraged him to at least try it, and conversation flowed around the table. Jack found himself seated beside a community college president on his other side discussing the decline in vocational training programs. We need more emphasis on skilled trades, Jack said, warming to a topic he felt passionate about. Not everyone wants or needs a four-year degree. There's dignity in working with your hands, creating something tangible. The college president nodded thoughtfully. Our funding model incentivizes academic tracks. It's harder to get support for vocational programs despite the employment statistics showing demand. That's part of what our new initiative addresses, Kate interjected from Jack's other side. Reynolds Community Build aims to create apprenticeship opportunities in construction trades focusing on affordable housing projects. Jack turned to her, genuinely interested now. Apprenticeships like formal training programs. Exactly, pairing experienced tradespeople with those who want to learn, particularly people who might face barriers to traditional education. Kate's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. We've secured funding to build or renovate 20 homes for families in need while simultaneously training the next generation of construction workers. The concept resonated with Jack immediately. He'd learned carpentry from his father, a traditional apprenticeship passed from generation to generation. The idea of formalizing that process, creating opportunities for others while helping families in need, it was elegant in its simplicity and purpose. Who's leading the program? Jack asked. Kate's smile held a hint of mischief. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. We need someone who understands the trades, has management capability, and most importantly, genuinely cares about both the craft and the community impact. Before Jack could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and Robert Blake approached the podium at the front of the room. A slideshow began on large screens around the ballroom, showing Reynolds logistics, trucks, warehouses, and smiling employees. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Reynolds Logistics Annual Community Appreciation Dinner. Robert's voice carried effortlessly through the sound system. For over 40 years, Reynolds has been part of Cedar Creek's economic foundation, and tonight we're pleased to announce an exciting new chapter in our commitment to this community. Jack watched as Robert detailed the company's history and growth, noting how he emphasized his own role in its success while making only passing references to Kate's leadership. When Robert finally introduced her as our dedicated CEO, Catherine Reynolds, the slight emphasis on "our" struck Jack as subtly possessive. Kate rose gracefully and took the podium, commanding attention without effort. In the dimmed light of the ballroom, she radiated confidence and purpose. Thank you all for being here tonight. Reynolds Logistics has thrived because Cedar Creek has thrived, and it's time we gave back in a meaningful way. She launched into an overview of the Community Build initiative, explaining how it would address both affordable housing shortages and workforce development. As she spoke, Jack watched the audience's reactions. Most seemed genuinely impressed, though he noted Robert and several older board members exchanging glances that suggested less than full support. Politics, Jack thought. Even good ideas had to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate politics. And now, Kate continued, I'd like to introduce someone whose perspective and expertise have been instrumental in shaping this initiative's direction. Jack Miller is a master craftsman whose work exemplifies the standards we aspire to set. Jack froze as Kate gestured toward him. He hadn't expected to be acknowledged publicly, certainly not as someone who had helped shape a program he'd only just learned about. Jack, would you mind joining me for a moment? The request left no room for graceful refusal. Jack rose acutely conscious of every eye in the room turning toward him. He made his way to the podium, his heart pounding against his ribs. Kate stepped aside slightly but remained close. Jack recently demonstrated the very values that define this initiative: skill, compassion, and a willingness to help others in need. While we're still finalizing leadership roles, his input has been invaluable. Jack realized she was offering him an opening to speak. He cleared his throat, fighting the instinct to flee. I believe in what Ms. Reynolds is describing. Craftsmanship passed from one generation to the next isn't just about building things, it's about building people, character, community. He found his rhythm, speaking from experience rather than preparation. When you create something with your own hands, something that will outlast you, it changes how you see the world. Everyone deserves that opportunity. The words came from some deep, genuine place within him, surprising Jack with their clarity and conviction. When he finished, the applause seemed sincere, and Kate's smile held a warmth that reached her eyes. As they returned to their seats, Kate whispered, "That was perfect. Thank you." Dessert was served, a chocolate creation that delighted Tyler and the twins, while the formal program concluded with more corporate acknowledgments and community recognitions. Jack half listened, his mind circling around what had just occurred. Kate had put him in an impossible position, forcing him into the spotlight without warning. Yet her request for him to join the project seemed genuine, and the project itself aligned with values Jack held dear. When the dinner finally ended, the adults moved to a reception area for coffee and networking, while the children continued their activities in the separate room. Kate was immediately surrounded by guests wanting her attention, leaving Jack momentarily alone with his thoughts. Quite a performance. Robert Blake appeared at Jack's elbow, his expression carefully neutral. "You speak well for a carpenter." Jack bit back a sharp retort. "Thanks. I wonder, though, do you understand what Catherine is really offering you?" Robert swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "This project has been in development for months. The budget is substantial, the political implications significant. And suddenly you appear with no background in corporate management or nonprofit administration, and Catherine wants to hand you the reins. She hasn't offered me anything specific yet. Hasn't she? The writing's on the wall, Miller. The question is, why?" Robert's gaze shifted to where Kate stood across the room, engaged in animated conversation with the mayor. Catherine is brilliant, driven, and usually calculated in her decisions, but occasionally her emotions cloud her judgment. The insinuation was clear, and it stirred an unexpected anger in Jack. "If you have concerns about Ms. Reynolds' leadership decisions, perhaps you should address them directly with her." Robert smiled thinly. "Oh, I intend to. The board meeting on Monday should be illuminating, especially when I present the alternative proposal I've been developing, one that achieves similar community relations goals without diverting company resources into housing projects." "Meaning what exactly?" "Meaning Catherine's passion project might be short-lived." Robert set his empty glass on a passing server's tray. "Just something to consider before you hitch your wagon to her star, Mr. Miller. Good evening." Jack watched Robert depart, uneasy with both the man's demeanor and the implications of his words. Corporate politics were foreign territory to Jack, but he recognized a threat when he heard one. Kate's initiative, and possibly her leadership position itself, faced opposition from within. "Your son is wonderful." Kate's voice pulsed Jack from his thoughts as she rejoined him. "The girls absolutely adore him. Tyler's been showing them how to build structures with the building blocks in the activity room." Jack smiled despite his lingering concern. "He wants to be an architect or an astronaut. Changes weekly." "Jack," Kate's tone grew serious, I need to apologize for putting you on the spot up there. It wasn't fair to ask you to speak without warning. The direct acknowledgement disarmed him. It was uncomfortable, but I meant what I said. I know you did. That's exactly why I want you involved. Kate glanced around, then lowered her voice. Could we find somewhere quieter to talk just for a few minutes? They found a small sitting area off the main reception, partially screened by large potted plants. Kate sank gratefully into a velvet armchair, extending her leg with the medical boot. Still painful, Jack asked, taking the seat opposite her. Only when I've been standing too long. She leaned forward slightly. Jack, I want to be direct with you. Reynolds Community Build needs a director, someone who will oversee the construction projects, manage the apprenticeship training, and be the public face of the initiative. I want that person to be you. Despite Robert's warning, the actual offer took Jack by surprise. Kate, I'm a carpenter, not an executive. I've never managed anything bigger than my own small business. But you understand the work itself, the skills, the standards, the challenges. You can speak the language of both the tradespeople and the apprentices. Kate's expression was earnest. The administrative aspects can be learned, and you'd have support staff. What can't be taught is genuine passion for craftsmanship and community impact. You have both. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a habit when overwhelmed. This is a lot to process. What exactly would the position entail? Full-time employment with Reynolds Logistics, competitive salary, and benefits, flexible hours to accommodate your parenting responsibilities. Kate outlined the specifics, a compensation package that made Jack's current income seem pitiful by comparison healthcare coverage that would eliminate his ongoing concerns about Tyler's asthma medications and a level of stability he hadn't experienced since before Sarah's illness. Why me? Jack finally asked the question that had been bothering him since her first mention of the opportunity. There must be dozens of qualified people you could hire. Kate was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. When you found me in that alley, you didn't hesitate. Not because there was anything to gain, but because it was the right thing to do. That's rare, Jack. Her eyes met his directly. And then I watched you with your son, saw your work, learned about how you've managed on your own these past years. You have integrity, skill, and resiliency, exactly what this program needs to succeed. The sincerity in her voice was compelling, but Jack couldn't shake a lingering suspicion that there was more to it than professional admiration. And what does Robert Blake think about this decision? Kate's expression tightened slightly. Robert has different priorities. He prefers more traditional corporate philanthropy, writing checks rather than direct involvement. But the board approved my proposal, and as CEO, the final staffing decisions are mine. He mentioned an alternative proposal he's presenting on Monday. Kate's surprise was evident. Did he? That's interesting timing, she sighed. Robert has been with Reynolds since my father's time. He expected to be named CEO when Dad retired, but the board chose me instead. There's been tension ever since. So I'd be walking into a political minefield. Potentially. Kate didn't sugarcoat it. But I believe in this project, Jack, and I believe you're the right person to lead it regardless of internal politics. Jack thought of Tyler, of the stability this opportunity could provide, the healthcare benefits, the regular hours. He thought of the apprenticeship program, giving others the chance to learn skills that had sustained his own family for generations. Then he thought of Robert Blake's warning and the corporate complications he barely understood. I need time to think about this. Kate nodded. Of course. Take the weekend. But I'd need your answer by Monday afternoon before the board meeting. She reached into her small evening bag and withdrew a folder. Here's the formal offer letter with all the details. Review it and call me when you've decided. As they rose to rejoin the party, Kate added, whatever you decide, Jack, thank you for coming tonight. It meant a lot to have you here. The subtle shift in her tone, from professional to something more personal, caught Jack's attention. There was a warmth in her eyes that suggested Kate Reynolds might see him as more than just a potential employee. Before he could respond, Tyler appeared with Hazel and Lily in tow, all three children flushed with excitement. Dad, we built a whole city with blocks and Legos, and there was a chocolate fountain just like I said. Tyler's enthusiasm bubbled over. Can we come here again sometime? Jack ruffled his son's hair. We'll see, buddy. It's getting late, though. We should head home. The disappointment on all three children's faces was immediate and identical. Hazel tugged at Kate's hand. "Can Tyler come play at our house sometime, please?" Kate glanced at Jack, a question in her eyes. "Maybe," Jack said, not wanting to make promises he couldn't keep. "Let's say goodnight now." The drive home was filled with Tyler's animated recounting of the evening, the food, the games, his new friends. Jack listened with half an ear, his mind preoccupied with Kate's offer and its implications. "Hazel and Lily live in a huge house with a pool," Tyler reported, "and they have a tree house their grandpa built them. They said I could come swim anytime." Jack gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That's nice of them, but we're pretty busy with school and my work." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Ms. Reynolds is pretty, and she smells like the flowers Mama used to grow." The innocent observation hit Jack like a physical blow. Sarah had loved gardening, especially the lavender plants that filled their small backyard each summer. Kate's perfume had indeed carried that same delicate scent. "She's nice." Jack managed his throat suddenly tight. "Do you like her, Dad? Like her?" Jack nearly missed their turn, startled by his son's directness. "It's not that simple, buddy. Ms. Reynolds and I hardly know each other." "But you saved her life. That's like a superhero meeting, like in the movies." Despite his turmoil, Jack had to smile at his son's romanticized view. "Real life isn't like the movies, Ty." "I think she likes you," Tyler persisted. "She kept looking at you during dinner, even when other people were talking." Jack chose not to respond to that observation, though it echoed his own awareness of Kate's attention throughout the evening. Instead, he directed the conversation toward Tyler's upcoming school week, safer territory by far. At home, as Jack helped his son prepare for bed, the folder Kate had given him sat unopened on the kitchen table, both tempting and intimidating. After Tyler was asleep, Jack finally settled at the table and opened it. The offer was even more generous than Kate had described verbally. The salary was nearly triple what Jack currently earned in a good year. The benefits package included comprehensive health insurance, retirement contributions, and an education fund for Tyler. The position would allow Jack to continue some private carpentry work on his own time if he chose. Attached was a more detailed description of the Community Build initiative. 20 homes over 2 years, 10 apprentices in the initial program, partnerships with local suppliers who would donate materials in exchange for publicity. The concept was solid, addressing real needs while providing tangible benefits to all involved. Yet doubt gnawed at Jack. This wasn't just about a job opportunity. It was about entering Kate Reynolds' world with all its complexities and politics. It meant trading independence for security, familiar challenges for new ones. And beneath it all lay the undeniable personal connection developing between them, a complication Jack wasn't sure he was ready to navigate. He closed the folder without reaching a decision. Tomorrow was Sunday. No work scheduled, a rare free day with Tyler. Jack would take his son fishing at Cedar Creek Lake, as they did whenever time allowed, and try to clear his head in the peace of nature before making this life-altering choice. Sunday dawned clear and cool, perfect weather for fishing. Jack and Tyler packed their gear into the truck, along with a cooler of sandwiches and drinks for a day by the lake. The familiar routine soothed Jack's restless thoughts. They had just finished loading when Jack's phone rang. The screen showed Mrs. Donovan's number, unusual for a Sunday morning. "Hello, Mrs. Donovan, is everything all right?" Her elderly voice trembled slightly. "Oh, Jack, I hate to bother you on a Sunday, but there's water coming through my ceiling from upstairs. I think a pipe might have burst in the bathroom." Jack closed his eyes briefly, knowing what this meant for their fishing plans. Mrs. Donovan was 83 and lived alone in a house badly in need of repairs. He couldn't leave her with a plumbing emergency. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he promised. Tyler's face fell when Jack explained the change in plans. "But we haven't been fishing in forever." "I know, buddy, and I'm sorry, but Mrs. Donovan needs help, and she doesn't have anyone else." Tyler kicked at the gravel driveway, shoulders slumped in disappointment. "It's always something. Every time we plan something fun, you have to work instead." The accusation stung because it contained truth. Jack knelt to his son's level. "I know it's hard, but sometimes helping others has to come first. You can bring your tablet and sit in Mrs. Donovan's living room while I fix the pipe." Tyler's expression remained mutinous, but he climbed into the truck without further argument. The drive to Mrs. Donovan's Victorian-era home passed in silence, Tyler's anger a palpable presence between them. The plumbing issue proved worse than anticipated. A pipe had indeed burst in the upstairs bathroom, sending water cascading through the ceiling into Mrs. Donovan's dining room. Jack shut off the main water supply and assessed the damage while Tyler sullenly played games on his tablet downstairs. "This is beyond my expertise, Mrs. Donovan. You need a licensed plumber." Jack surveyed the sodden ceiling, calculating the extent of the repairs that would be needed. "I can call Mike Johnson. He's fair and won't overcharge you." Mrs. Donovan wrung her hands, distress evident in her faded blue eyes. "I don't know if I can afford a plumber right now, Jack. My pension only stretches so far." The admission tightened Jack's chest. He'd known Mrs. Donovan for years, had watched her struggle to maintain her dignity and independence after her husband's death. She'd been kind to Tyler, babysitting occasionally, and always remembering his birthday with homemade cookies. "Let me make some calls," Jack said. "We'll figure something out." 2 hours later, Mike arrived with his plumbing tools, having agreed to charge only for parts after Jack explained the situation. Between them, they managed to repair the burst pipe and assess the ceiling damage. It would require replacing a section of drywall and repainting work Jack offered to do at no charge the following weekend. By the time they finished the emergency repairs, it was mid-afternoon. Tyler's initial anger had faded, replaced by boredom, despite Mrs. Donovan's attempts to entertain him with stories of Cedar Creek's early days. "Can we still go fishing?" Tyler asked, as they loaded tools back into Jack's truck. "Just for a little while." Jack chimed his watch. "It'll be dark in a couple of hours, but we could try for a short trip." The compromise seemed to satisfy Tyler, whose mood improved noticeably as they headed towards Cedar Creek Lake. The fishing spot Jack preferred was on the lake's north shore, less populated than the main beach area, and usually quiet on Sunday afternoons. Today, however, the small parking area held several vehicles, including a silver Mercedes SUV that looked familiar. Jack had just helped Tyler unload their fishing gear when he heard a delighted squeal. Tyler, Mr. Jack, Hazel and Lily Reynolds ran toward them from the shoreline, their dark hair bouncing in identical ponytails. Both wore life jackets over swimsuits despite the cool weather. Behind them, Kate walked more slowly, dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater, her medical boot replaced by a simple walking brace. "Well, this is a surprise," Kate said when she reached them. "I didn't realize you fished here." Jack nodded, suddenly conscious of his worn t-shirt and faded jeans. "Whenever we can. Tyler and I try to come at least once a month." "We're having a picnic," Lily announced, pointing to a blanket spread beneath a large oak tree. "You should join us." Tyler looked hopefully at Jack, his earlier disappointment seemingly forgotten at the prospect of time with his new friends. Jack hesitated, caught between his desire for a quiet afternoon to think and his son's obvious enthusiasm. "We don't want to intrude on your family time." "Please," Kate said. "We have more than enough food and the girls would love the company." What was intended to be a short, polite visit extended into hours as the children played along the shoreline, skipping rocks and building miniature dams in the shallows. Jack and Kate sat on the picnic blanket, conversation flowing more easily than Jack would have expected. "I didn't take you for the picnicking type," Jack admitted as he accepted a sandwich from the elaborate spread Kate had brought. She laughed, the sound lighter than at the formal dinner. "You mean CEOs don't pack lunches and sit on the ground? I try to give the girls as normal a childhood as possible despite everything." The CEO part, the wealth part, or the single mom part. All of it. Kate watched her daughters playing with Tyler, their laughter carrying across the water. When David left, my ex-husband, the girls were only 3, old enough to miss him, but not old enough to understand why he wasn't coming back. Jack recognized the pain behind her matter-of-fact tone. That must have been difficult. It was, still is sometimes. Kate's gaze remained on her daughters. He lives in California now with his new wife. Sees the girls maybe twice a year. "I'm sorry." Kate turned to him, her expression softening. "At least Tyler has the knowledge that his mother loved him until the very end. My girls have to cope with the fact that their father simply chose to leave." The raw vulnerability in her admission caught Jack off guard. This wasn't the polished corporate executive from last night's dinner, but a woman bearing her own burdens, fighting her own battles. "Children are resilient," Jack said gently, "but that doesn't make it any easier on the parent left behind." Kate nodded, a silent acknowledgement of their shared experience, despite the vastly different circumstances. "Have you thought any more about the offer?" The abrupt return to professional matters created an almost physical distance between them. Jack gathered his thoughts before responding. I have. It's an incredible opportunity, Kate, but I'm not convinced I'm the right person for it. Why not? For starters, I have no experience running a program like this. The construction part, the apprenticeship training, I understand those. But the administrative aspects, the corporate politics, that's foreign territory. Kate considered his concerns. The administrative tasks can be learned. As for the politics, she smiled wryly. You've already encountered Robert, so you have a taste of what you'd be dealing with. That's part of what concerns me. I got the distinct impression he's actively working against this initiative. Robert believes in traditional corporate philanthropy, donations to established charities, sponsorships of civic events, things that generate positive publicity without fundamentally changing the status quo. Kate's expression grew serious. The Community Build program is different. It's hands-on, directly addressing needs in our city, potentially transforming lives. Robert sees that as messy, unpredictable, and off-mission. And the board is divided. Some members share Robert's concerns. Others support my vision. Kate tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a surprisingly vulnerable gesture. Monday's meeting could go either way, especially if Robert has been developing an alternative proposal without my knowledge. Jack watched the children playing at the water's edge, Tyler showing the twins how to find the flattest stones for skipping. Why is this project so important to you, Kate, beyond the corporate social responsibility angle? Kate was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. Did you know I was homeless for a time when I was 12? The revelation stunned Jack. No. My father's first business failed during the recession. We lost everything, our house, our savings. For 6 months, we lived in our car, then a shelter, until Dad could get back on his feet. Her voice remained steady, but Jack could see the memory's impact in her eyes. Reynolds Logistics was his second attempt. Built literally from nothing, one used truck picking up odd shipping jobs wherever he could find them. Jack tried to reconcile this story with the polished, privileged image Kate presented to the world. I had no idea. Few people do. It's not something I advertise in corporate profiles. Kate watched a pair of ducks glide across the lake's surface. That experience shaped me, made me understand that the line between stability and crisis is thinner than most people realize. One illness, one job loss, one stroke of bad luck can change everything. The parallels to Jack's own precarious situation after Sarah's illness were unmistakable, though he'd managed to avoid homelessness through stubborn determination and Mrs. Winters' occasional childcare help. The Community Build program isn't just about affordable housing or job training, Kate continued. It's about creating stability for families teetering on that edge. And it needs someone leading it who truly understands what's at stake, not an administrator who sees it as a line item in a budget. Her passion was evident and genuine, making Jack reevaluate his assumptions about her motives. This wasn't a vanity project or a corporate PR initiative. It was deeply personal to Kate in ways he hadn't anticipated. I appreciate you sharing that with me, Jack said finally. It changes my perspective on a few things. Does it change your thinking about the position? Jack watched Tyler laugh as he successfully skipped a stone 4 times across the lake's surface. I'm still concerned about my qualifications, but yes, it makes me reconsider what I might be able to contribute. Kate seemed satisfied with that response. Take tonight to think it over. Call me in the morning with your decision. As the afternoon light began to fade, they packed up the picnic supplies and fishing gear. The children, exhausted from hours of play, exchanged reluctant goodbyes with promises of future adventures. We had fun today, Kate said as they walked toward their respective vehicles. It was nice seeing you in a more relaxed setting. Jack found himself smiling despite his lingering uncertainty about the job offer. It was nice being seen that way. The subtle shift in their interaction, from potential employer and employee to something less defined but more personal, hung in the air between them. Kate's gaze held his for a moment longer than necessary before she turned to help her daughters into their car seats. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Jack sat at his kitchen table with Kate's folder open before him, weighing options that would change the trajectory of his life and his son's. The stability and security the position offered were undeniable. The purpose aligned with his values. The only real question was whether he could navigate the corporate aspects. and what it would mean to work closely with Kate Reynolds when their connection already felt complex and charged with unacknowledged possibilities. His phone rang, displaying Mrs. Winter's number. Concerned, Jack answered immediately. "Jack, I'm so sorry to call so late." Her voice shook with distress. "But there's been an accident. My daughter Elaine fell down the stairs at her house in Charlotte. They think she's broken her hip. I need to go to her right away, but I can't drive at night anymore with my eyesight." "I'll take you," Jack said without hesitation. "Give me 15 minutes to arrange something for Tyler." He called the only other person he could think of who might help at this hour. Mike Johnson, his plumber friend, who had 3 kids of his own. Mike agreed to let Tyler sleep over, and Jack quickly packed a bag with his son's essentials. Tyler barely stirred as Jack carried him to the car, then to Mike's house, where a spare bed was waiting. With his son safely settled, Jack drove Mrs. Winters the 90 minutes to Charlotte General Hospital, his mind divided between concern for her daughter and his pending decision about Kate's offer. In the hospital waiting room, while doctors assessed Elaine's injuries, Mrs. Winters clasped Jack's hand tightly. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight, Jack. You've always been there when I needed help ever since Sarah passed." "You've helped me plenty with Tyler," Jack reminded her. "That's what community is about, being there for each other." The words echoed Kate's description of the Community Build initiative, creating stability, fostering connection, building something that extended beyond physical structures. In that moment, Jack's decision crystallized with sudden clarity. By the time Elaine was settled in a hospital room with a confirmed hip fracture that would require surgery, it was past midnight. Jack drove Mrs. Winters to her daughter's house, where she would stay during Elaine's recovery, helping her inside with her hastily packed suitcase. "Will you be all right getting home?" Mrs. Winters asked, her concern for him touching, given her own distress. "I'll be fine. I'm going to grab coffee before heading back." Jack hugged the elderly woman gently. "Call me if you need anything at all." "Your house checked on mail, collected anything?" As he drove back towards Cedar Creek in the early morning darkness, Jack felt a strange sense of peace despite the long, exhausting night. The decision he'd been struggling with now seemed obvious. Not easy, but clear. He pulled into a 24-hour diner at the highway junction, ordered coffee, and sat in a vinyl booth beneath flickering fluorescent lights. Outside the window, the first hints of dawn colored the eastern sky with promise. Jack took out his phone and composed a text to Kate, knowing she wouldn't see it until morning. "I accept the position. When can we meet to discuss next steps?" The response came faster than he expected. "Couldn't sleep either. This is wonderful news. Can you come to the office at 10 a.m.? Jack smiled, imagining Kate awake in her undoubtedly elegant home, perhaps working late or simply restless like himself. He texted back his agreement, then sipped his coffee and watched the sunrise paint the world in new colors. Whatever came next, the challenges of the new position, the corporate politics with Robert, the evolving connection with Kate, Jack would face it with the same steady determination that had carried him through the darkest days after Sarah's death. One step at a time, one day at a time, building something lasting from the materials life provided. Behind the diner, a train whistle sounded in the distance, not mournful this time, but somehow hopeful, announcing movement and possibility. Jack finished his coffee, paid his bill, and headed home to prepare for a day that would mark the beginning of an entirely new chapter in his life. The Reynolds Logistics headquarters dominated Cedar Creek's modest skyline, 12 stories of steel and glass, reflecting the morning sunlight. Jack sat in his truck in the visitor's parking space tie, uncomfortable around his neck, palms damp against the steering wheel. He dropped Tyler at school with promises to pick him up afterwards and tell him everything about the new job. Jack checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, straightening the tie he rarely wore. The blue button-down shirt and khaki slacks were the best he owned, still far removed from the tailored suits he'd glimpsed on executives at Saturday's dinner. Taking a deep breath, he gathered his courage and headed toward the revolving glass doors. The lobby gleamed with marble and chrome, a reception desk staffed by 2 professionally dressed women. Behind them, the Reynolds Logistics logo, a stylized R with a flowing line suggesting movement, dominated the wall in brushed metal. "Jack Miller to see Catherine Reynolds," he said, conscious of his calloused hands and scuffed shoes against the pristine surroundings. The receptionist smiled professionally. "Yes, Mr. Miller. Ms. Reynolds is expecting you, 15th floor." She handed him a visitor's badge, directing him toward a bank of elevators. Jack had assumed the headquarters had 12 floors from the outside. The existence of higher floors invisible from street level suggested executive spaces separate from the main operations, another world above the one visible to ordinary citizens. The elevator rose silently, numbers illuminating in sequence. When the doors opened on 15, Jack stepped into a reception area far more intimate than the main lobby, warm wood paneling, comfortable seating, fresh flowers and crystal vases. Mr. Miller? A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair cropped short rose from behind an elegant desk. I'm Margaret Daniels, Ms. Reynolds' executive assistant. She's on a call, but asked me to show you to her office. May I get you coffee? Jack accepted the offer, following Margaret down a corridor lined with photographs, not corporate milestones as he'd expected, but community scenes, children playing in a park bearing the Reynolds name, workers loading disaster relief supplies onto Reynolds trucks, a ribbon cutting for what appeared to be a community center. Margaret showed him into Kate's office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Cedar Creek. Unlike the sterile executive offices, Jack had imagined this room felt personal. Bookshelves lined one wall, children's artwork framed on another, fresh flowers on a side table. Ms. Reynolds will join you shortly, Margaret said, departing silently. Left alone, Jack studied the space, seeking insights into the woman who occupied it. The desk was substantial, but not ostentatious, papers organized in neat stacks. A framed photo showed Kate with Hazel and Lily at what appeared to be a beach, all three laughing with windblown hair. Another frame held what looked like a newspaper clipping yellowed with age. Jack moved closer, curious. It showed a much younger man, Kate's father, he presumed, standing proudly beside a single delivery truck with the original Reynolds shipping logo painted on its side. My father's first truck, Kate said from the doorway, bought secondhand with every penny he had left after we lost everything. Jack turned, taking in Kate's appearance. In tailored gray slacks and a silk blouse, she projected authority while maintaining the warmth he had come to associate with her. The walking brace on her ankle remained the only visible reminder of their first meeting. It's remarkable what he built from that beginning. Jack gestured toward the view of the company's current headquarters. Kate crossed to her desk but didn't sit, instead perching on its edge in a gesture that seemed to deliberately reduce the formality between them. Dad always said success isn't measured by what you gain, but by what you overcome to achieve it. Her eyes met Jack's. I think that's true for people too. The statement hung between them, acknowledging without directly referencing the challenges they'd both faced: her experience with homelessness and subsequent rise to CEO, his loss and struggle as a single father. I'm glad you accepted the position, Kate continued. The board meeting is at 2 this afternoon. I'd like to introduce you as the official director of Reynolds Community Build. Is that wise, given what you said about Robert's opposition? Kate's expression hardened slightly. Robert serves at the board's pleasure and mine. He's entitled to his opinions, but not to undermine initiatives I've already received approval for. A knock at the door preceded Margaret's entrance with coffee for Jack and what appeared to be Kate's regular order. Your 9:30 appointment called to reschedule, and Mr. Blake is asking if you have a few minutes before the board meeting. Kate's lips pressed into a thin line. Tell him I'm booked solid until the meeting. She waited for Margaret to leave before continuing more softly. Robert's been calling all morning. No doubt he wants to present his concerns about you before I can make the formal announcement. What exactly are his objections to me? Officially, your lack of corporate experience, absence of advanced degrees, no background in program management. Kate sipped her coffee. Unofficially, you represent a direction for Reynolds Logistics that Robert fundamentally disagrees with community investment over pure profit maximization. Jack absorbed this, wondering again what he was walking into. And the board? Where do they stand? Divided. 4 members reliably support my vision. 3 typically align with Robert's more traditional approach. 2 swing votes. Kate's gaze was steady. Today could go either way. Before Jack could respond, Margaret appeared again. Ms. Reynolds, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been an incident at one of the warehouses. A shelving unit collapsed. 2 workers are being transported to the hospital. Kate was instantly on her feet. How serious? Initial reports suggest non-life-threatening injuries, but there's significant damage to inventory and OSHA will need to be notified. I'll go there immediately. Kate turned to Jack. I'm sorry, we'll need to continue this later. The board meeting is still at 2. Can you return then? Jack nodded, rising. Of course. Margaret will show you out and give you the employment paperwork to review. Kate gathered her purse and phone. This is unfortunate timing, but it's also the reality of what we do. Sometimes crisis management takes precedence over planning. After completing paperwork in a conference room and returning his visitor badge, Jack found himself at loose ends with several hours before the board meeting. Rather than drive home and back, he decided to visit a nearby hardware store to pick up supplies for Mrs. Donovan's ceiling repair. The familiar environment of Sanders Hardware soothed Jack's nerves. Here, among tools and building materials, he knew exactly who he was and what he was doing. A stark contrast to the uncertainty he'd felt in Kate's executive domain. Jack Miller, haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Bill Sanders, the third-generation owner, greeted him from behind the counter. What project are you working on now? Jack explained Mrs. Donovan's ceiling damage while selecting drywall, joint compound, and paint. Bill offered suggestions on mold prevention given the water damage. Heard a rumor you might be going corporate, Bill said casually as he rang up Jack's purchases. Jack's surprise must have shown on his face because Bill chuckled. Small town, remember, my cousin's wife works reception at Reynolds. Said you had an appointment with the CEO herself this morning. The speed of small town information flow never ceased to amaze Jack. Nothing's official yet. Well, they'd be lucky to have you. Bill handed Jack his receipt. Just don't forget us little guys when you're rubbing elbows with the executives. Jack loaded the supplies into his truck, Bill's comment echoing in his mind. The hardware store owner had meant it lightheartedly, but it touched on Jack's deeper concerns that accepting Kate's offer meant leaving behind the world he understood, the identity he'd built as a craftsman working with his hands. With time still to spare, Jack drove past his workshop to check for messages. An envelope had been slipped under the door, an invitation to bid on custom cabinetry for a new restaurant downtown, exactly the kind of job that would have excited him a week ago. Now it represented a path not taken, an alternate future slipping away. Jack returned to the Reynolds building with 15 minutes to spare before the board meeting. This time, Margaret escorted him directly to a large conference room on the 14th floor. Through glass walls, Jack could see a long table surrounded by leather chairs, gradually filling with men and women in business attire. Ms. Reynolds texted that she's on her way back from the warehouse, Margaret explained. The meeting may start a few minutes late. Jack nodded, standing awkwardly in the hallway, feeling out of place despite the visitor badge clipped to his shirt pocket. Through the glass, he could see Robert Blake, already seated, engaged in animated conversation with an older man at the head of the table. Jack. Kate's voice came from behind him. She looked harried, a smudge of dust on her otherwise impeccable blouse, suggesting the warehouse visit had been hands-on. Thank you for coming back. The situation is contained, but it delayed me. Are you ready for this? Before Jack could answer, Robert emerged from the conference room. Catherine, a word before we begin. His gaze slid dismissively over Jack. Whatever you need to say can wait until the meeting, Robert. Kate's tone was professional but firm. Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. As you wish. The chairman was asking about the warehouse incident. I filled him in on what I knew. The subtle emphasis on I wasn't lost on Jack. Robert had used Kate's absence to establish his narrative with the board chairman. Kate's expression confirmed she recognized the maneuver as well. I'm sure you did, Robert. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need a moment with Mr. Miller before we begin. And when Robert returned to the conference room, Kate turned to Jack. The dynamics in there are complex. Let me introduce you and outline the Community Build Initiative first. Speak when invited. Keep your responses focused on construction expertise and training approaches, not administrative details. Jack nodded, swallowing his nervousness. I'll follow your lead. Inside the conference room, Kate transformed her posture, straightening her voice, taking on an authoritative tone that commanded attention, despite her being the only woman at the table. She introduced Jack briefly as they took their seats, then addressed the warehouse incident with clear factual responses to the chairman's questions. Now, turning to today's main agenda item, Kate said when the safety discussion concluded, I'm pleased to present the final implementation plan for Reynolds Community Build, including our proposed program director. For the next 15 minutes, Kate outlined the initiative with precision and passion: affordable housing, construction, apprenticeship training, community revitalization. Jack watched the board members' reactions, noting which faces reflected enthusiasm and which skepticism. Financial projections suggest break-even within 3 years, Kate continued, with significant brand value enhancement and potential tax advantages. Most importantly, we'll be creating tangible change in neighborhoods where many of our own employees live. She nodded toward Jack. Mr. Miller brings exceptional construction expertise and authentic community connections to this role. As some of you may have heard, he was the civilian who rescued me during my recent accident, an act that first brought him to my attention. Jack felt the board members' scrutiny intensify. One older man near the chairman frowned. Are you suggesting this appointment is based on personal gratitude? Catherine, Kate didn't flinch. I'm suggesting that Mr. Miller's character was first demonstrated through his actions that day, Mr. Hargrove. His qualifications became apparent through subsequent professional discussions. Robert cleared his throat. While Mr. Miller's heroism is commendable, this position requires management experience and financial acumen. I've taken the liberty of identifying several candidates with more suitable backgrounds. He distributed folders around the table, his alternative proposal, Jack realized. Kate's expression remained neutral, but Jack noticed her fingers tighten around her pen. Furthermore, Robert continued, I question whether the entire Community Build initiative represents the best use of company resources at this time. The projected ROI is speculative at best and the distraction from core business operations. The board approved this initiative 3 months ago, Robert, Kate interrupted. Today's discussion is about implementation, not revisiting the decision. Robert smiled thinly. Circumstances change, Catherine. The warehouse incident this morning highlights operational vulnerabilities that perhaps deserve our investment more than social projects. The strategic linking of the morning's accident to his opposition of Community Build was masterful, Jack had to admit. Several board members who had seemed supportive now looked uncertain. May I address the board? Jack's voice surprised even himself, steady despite his thundering heartbeat. The chairman nodded, curiosity evident in his expression. Please do, Mr. Miller. Jack stood conscious of his worn shoes against the plush carpet, his calloused hands against the polished table. I understand your concerns about my background. I don't have an MBA or corporate management experience. What I do have is 20 years of construction knowledge, relationships with every reputable contractor in Cedar Creek, and firsthand understanding of what skilled trades can mean for someone's future. He paused, making eye contact with each board member. My father was a carpenter. He taught me that craftsmanship isn't just about building things, it's about building people. Every apprentice who works alongside a master tradesperson learns more than techniques. They learn pride in work, well done, responsibility to those who will use what they create, commitment to excellence that can't be rushed or faked. The room had gone completely silent. Even Robert was watching him intently. Reynolds Community Build isn't just charity, Jack continued. It's investment in human capital and community goodwill that will yield returns for generations. The young people we train won't just build houses. They'll become taxpayers, homeowners, consumers, maybe even Reynolds Logistics, employees or contractors. The families who occupy those homes will have stability that translates to better educational outcomes for their children, better health, better community engagement. Jack gestured toward the window overlooking Cedar Creek. Out there are people with incredible potential who just need an opportunity to prove themselves. Some of them are homeless now, like Ms. Reynolds once was, before her father rebuilt their lives. Some are struggling single parents like I was after losing my wife. Some are teenagers who don't see college as their path but could excel in skilled trades if given proper guidance. He brought his gaze back to the board members. If you're looking for someone who understands spreadsheets better than people, I'm not your candidate. But if you want someone who will ensure every dollar of this initiative creates maximum impact through quality construction and meaningful training, then I believe I can serve Reynolds Logistics well. Jack sat down, heart racing. He couldn't read the expressions around the table, some thoughtful, others inscrutable. Kate's eyes held a warmth that steadied him. Thank you, Mr. Miller, the chairman said after a moment. Your passion is evident. Robert seemed to have recovered from his surprise at Jack's speech. Passion doesn't build balance sheets. This program requires financial oversight that Mr. Miller simply isn't equipped to provide. Kate leaned forward. That's why we've structured the program with appropriate controls. Mr. Miller would focus on construction and training, while financial administration remains within our existing corporate framework, under Finance Director Melissa Chen. She nodded toward a sharp-looking woman seated midway down the table who confirmed with a crisp nod. This seemed to reassure several board members. The discussion continued for another 40 minutes, detailed questions about budgets, timelines, risk management, and expected outcomes. Jack answered the construction-related queries with confidence born of experience, while Kate and Melissa handled the financial aspects. Finally, the chairman called for a vote. All in favor of proceeding with Reynolds Community Build, as presented with Jack Miller as program director, please indicate by raising your hand. Jack held his breath as hands went up Kate's, immediately followed by 3 others, then a 5th after a moment's hesitation. 5 votes. Robert's face darkened. Those opposed, Robert's hand shot up, followed by 2 others, 3 votes against. Abstentions. 2 remaining board members raised their hands, unwilling to commit either way. The motion carries 5-3 with 2 abstentions. The chairman announced, Ms. Reynolds, please proceed with the implementation as presented. Mr. Miller, welcome to Reynolds Logistics. Jack exhaled slowly as congratulations came from around the table. Kate's smile was professional, but her eyes conveyed deeper satisfaction. Robert stood abruptly, gathering his papers without meeting Jack's gaze. Catherine, a word when you have a moment, Robert said, before exiting, his tone making the request sound more like a demand. The meeting dispersed gradually, board members stopping to introduce themselves to Jack with varying degrees of warmth. The chairman, Walter Hargrove, shook Jack's hand firmly. Unusual background for this role, but I appreciated your perspective. Walter's grip was strong despite his 70-plus years. Catherine has good instincts about people. Don't make her regret going out on a limb for you. I won't, sir. When the room emptied except for Kate and Jack, she finally allowed herself a genuine smile. Congratulations, Director Miller. That speech was unexpected, but exactly what they needed to hear. Did I overstep? I hadn't planned to speak until Robert started undermining the entire program. Kate shook her head. You showed them precisely why you're the right person for this role, authenticity that can't be faked and a genuine connection to the mission. She gathered her materials. I need to deal with Robert, then we should discuss your onboarding. Can you start Monday? Monday works. I have a few client projects to wrap up this week. Jack hesitated. Kate, what happens with Robert now? He didn't seem to take that vote well. Her expression turned serious. Robert and I have history to resolve that predates you. Don't worry about it. Focus on preparing for your new role. Jack nodded, though concern lingered. He'd been in enough workplace situations to recognize when tension between leadership figures could create collateral damage. Kate walked him to the elevator, maintaining professional distance now that they were back in the public areas of the building. I'll have HR send the formal offer letter and benefits package today. Take time to review everything carefully. As the elevator doors opened, Kate added more quietly, Thank you, Jack, for believing in this enough to step into the unknown. The genuine gratitude in her voice stayed with Jack as he left the building, heading to pick up Tyler from school. His life had just changed course dramatically. New job, new colleagues, new challenges he wasn't entirely sure he was prepared for. Yet underneath the apprehension ran a current of excitement he hadn't felt in years. Tyler burst from the school building at dismissal time, backpack bouncing as he ran to Jack's truck. Did you get the job? Are we going to be rich now? Jack laughed, ruffling his son's hair as they climbed into the vehicle. I got the job, but no, we're not going to be rich. We'll be more comfortable, though. The benefits include health insurance. Does that mean I can get braces like Jacob? He says his teeth are going to be super straight when they come off. The innocent question caught Jack off guard. He hadn't realized Tyler was self-conscious about his slightly crooked front teeth. Sarah had mentioned eventually needing orthodontic work, but after her illness, such concerns had been pushed aside by more pressing financial priorities. We can definitely talk to an orthodontist now, Jack promised, making a mental note to check the dental coverage details. They stopped for ice cream to celebrate, Tyler chattering excitedly about telling his friends that his dad was a business executive now. Jack gently corrected him, explaining the program director role in terms an 8-year-old could understand. So you'll still build stuff, but you'll be the boss, Tyler asked, chocolate ice cream smeared across his chin. Sort of. I'll be teaching others how to build and organizing projects to help families who need homes. Tyler considered this seriously. Like if someone's house burns down, sometimes, or families who can't afford decent housing otherwise. Like we almost couldn't after Mom died. The directness of children could still take Jack's breath away sometimes. Yes, buddy, like we almost couldn't. Tyler nodded solemnly. That's a good job, Dad. The simple affirmation from his son meant more than all the board members' approval combined. Jack squeezed Tyler's shoulder, throat suddenly tight with emotion. At home, reality intruded on the day's triumph. Jack's answering machine blinked with messages, two clients expecting updates on projects, Mrs. Donovan checking when he'd repair her ceiling, and Mike Johnson calling about a possible collaboration on a large renovation job that would have been their biggest paying project of the year. Jack sat at his kitchen table, calculating how to gracefully extract himself from commitments while maintaining professional relationships he had spent years building. The renovation job alone would have sustained his business for months, yet now he needed to refer it elsewhere. As he made calls explaining his new circumstances, Jack experienced a strange mix of emotions: pride in the opportunity ahead, grief for the independent craftsman, identity he was setting aside, anxiety about adapting to corporate culture, and lingering discomfort about the tensions with Robert Blake. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Jack's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Jack Miller. Jack, it's Robert Blake. The smooth voice carried no hint of the afternoon's defeat. I hope I'm not calling too late. Jack straightened in his chair, instantly wary. Not at all. What can I do for you? I wanted to congratulate you personally on your appointment. We may have appeared at odds in the boardroom, but I assure you I'm committed to the success of all Reynolds initiatives. The words were right, but something in the tone rang false. Jack chose his response carefully. I appreciate that, Robert. I understand you had reservations about my qualifications. Professional disagreements are just that, professional, not personal. Robert paused. Perhaps we could meet for lunch tomorrow. I'd like to share some institutional knowledge that might help you navigate your new role more effectively. Jack hesitated, suspicion warring with practicality. Robert clearly wielded significant influence within Reynolds. Having him as an enemy would make Jack's job infinitely harder. Yet something about the sudden outreach felt calculated. Lunch would be fine, Jack said finally. What time and where? Noon at the Capitol Grill downtown. My treat, of course. Jack agreed, and ending the call with uneasiness still churning in his stomach. The Capitol Grill was among the most expensive restaurants in Cedar Creek, a power lunch venue where business deals were made over $50 steaks. Another world he would need to learn to navigate. The next morning brought a thick envelope from Reynolds Logistics HR containing the formal offer letter, benefits package, employee handbook, and orientation schedule. The salary figure, nearly triple Jack's average annual income, still seemed surreal, as did the comprehensive health and retirement benefits. Jack signed the necessary forms, marveling at how quickly life could change course. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a struggling carpenter with mounting bills and uncertain prospects. Now he was preparing to direct a multi-million-dollar community initiative for one of the region's largest companies. At noon, Jack entered the Capitol Grill feeling conspicuously underdressed, despite wearing his best clothes. The maitre d' led him to a corner table where Robert Blake sat reviewing documents, a glass of amber liquid at his elbow, despite the early hour. Robert rose, extending his hand with a smile that remained coolly professional. Jack, thank you for coming. Please sit. The waiter appeared, instantly reciting specials in reverential tones. Robert ordered without consulting the menu, clearly a regular, while Jack selected the least expensive steak option, conscious of the prices, despite Robert's assurance that lunch was on Reynolds. I imagine this has been quite a whirlwind for you, Robert began when the waiter departed. From independent contractor to corporate director in what a week. Jack nodded. It's been unexpected, certainly. Catherine has always been impulsive in her decisions. Robert sipped his drink. An admirable quality in some contexts, though sometimes challenging in corporate leadership. The subtle criticism hung in the air, testing Jack's response. He kept his expression neutral. Ms. Reynolds strikes me as thoughtful and strategic, actually. Robert's smile tightened fractionally. Of course, I meant no criticism, merely noting different leadership styles. He leaned forward slightly. Jack, I invited you here because I believe in Reynolds Logistics' success above all personal considerations. The board has approved Community Build with you as director, and I will support that decision fully. I appreciate that. However, Robert continued, corporate environments differ significantly from independent contracting. There are political realities, historical contexts, and financial pressures that may not be immediately apparent to newcomers. Jack recognized the conversation for what it was, part orientation, part warning, part establishment of dominance. I'm sure there's a great deal for me to learn about the corporate side. That's why the program structure keeps financial administration within the existing framework. Robert nodded approvingly. A wise arrangement. Still, as program director, you'll need to navigate board expectations, budgetary constraints, and public relations considerations. He paused as their salads arrived. Catherine has tremendous vision, but between us, practical implementation isn't always her strength. She can be idealistic. The subtle attempt to create an alliance against Kate wasn't lost on Jack. He chose his words carefully. Every successful project needs both vision and practical implementation. I'm looking forward to providing the latter while supporting Ms. Reynolds' overall direction. Robert studied him for a moment, reassessing. You're more politically adept than your background suggested. Good. You'll need that skill. He speared a piece of lettuce precisely. Tell me, what do you know about Catherine's history with Reynolds Logistics? The abrupt subject change caught Jack off guard. I know her father founded the company, and she took over as CEO when he retired. The simplified version, yes. Robert set down his fork. Thomas Reynolds built this company from nothing, a true American success story. I joined in the early days when operations consisted of 3 trucks and a rented warehouse. For 25 years, I worked alongside Thomas, helping transform Reynolds into a regional powerhouse. The implied message was clear. Robert had been there long before Kate had contributed to the company's growth while she was still a child. When Thomas announced his retirement 5 years ago, Robert continued, the logical succession plan seemed obvious to everyone, including Thomas himself based on our private conversations. Then suddenly, Catherine returned from her executive position at a tech company in Boston, expressing interest in Reynolds' leadership. Jack kept his expression neutral, despite his growing discomfort with the conversation's direction. Family businesses often transition to the next generation. True, though, Catherine had shown little interest in logistics until then. Her expertise was in tech marketing, not freight operations. Robert's tone remained conversational, but his eyes had hardened. The board vote was unexpectedly close. 3 years after Catherine took over, Thomas passed away. Since then, she's been gradually shifting the company away from its core identity toward what she calls community impact initiatives. The waiters arrived with their main courses, providing Jack a moment to process Robert's narrative. He was clearly being presented a version of history meant to cast Kate as an opportunistic outsider who had claimed Robert's rightful position and was now undermining the company's traditional focus. I can't speak to company history before my time, Jack said when the waiters departed. But the Community Build initiative seems to complement rather than replace Reynolds' core business. Robert cut his steak with surgical precision. Perhaps. Time will tell. He changed subjects abruptly again. I understand you're a widower with a young son. Catherine mentioned your wife passed from cancer. My condolences. The personal pivot was jarring. Thank you. Single parenting while managing career demands can be challenging. My first wife and I divorced when our children were young. The demands of building Reynolds alongside Thomas meant long hours away from home. Robert's expression softened marginally. Catherine herself is familiar with those challenges as a single mother. Perhaps that shared experience influenced her interest in your candidacy. The insinuation that Kate's decision had been personal rather than professional prickled Jack's temper, but he maintained his composure. Ms. Reynolds has been clear that my construction expertise and community connections were the primary factors in her decision. Of course, Robert smiled blandly. I merely observe that Catherine tends to blur professional and personal boundaries occasionally, an understandable tendency given her history. Jack set down his fork, appetite diminishing despite the excellent food. Robert, I appreciate the lunch and the conversation, but I'm not entirely clear on your purpose in arranging this meeting. Robert studied him for a long moment. Direct. I respect that. He dabbed his mouth with his napkin. My purpose, Jack, is simple Reynolds Logistics success. I've dedicated my professional life to this company. While Catherine and I may differ on strategy, we share that fundamental goal. He leaned forward slightly. Community Build will proceed with you as director. That's been decided. I want to ensure its success within appropriate parameters that don't jeopardize core operations or shareholder value. To that end, I'm offering myself as a resource to you, someone who understands the corporate environment you're entering and can help you navigate its complexities. The offer seemed reasonable on its surface, yet Jack couldn't shake the feeling that accepting Robert's mentorship would somehow position him in opposition to Kate. I appreciate that offer. I'll certainly have questions as I settle into the role. Excellent. Robert signaled for the check. One final observation, if I may. Catherine is passionate about this initiative for deeply personal reasons connected to her childhood experiences with housing instability. That passion is admirable but can sometimes cloud objective assessment of program, metrics, and outcomes. He fixed Jack with a penetrating gaze. The board approved this initiative with specific ROI expectations. As director, your primary accountability will be to those metrics, not to Catherine's personal vision, however well-intentioned. Remember that distinction and you'll thrive at Reynolds. The warning was unmistakable beneath the mentorship veneer. Jack nodded non-committally as Robert paid the bill and they rose to leave. Thank you for lunch, Jack said as they exited the restaurant. It's given me plenty to think about. Robert smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. That was my intention. I look forward to working together, Jack. Driving away, Jack processed the interaction, recognizing he'd been given a masterclass in corporate politics, complete with alliance-building subtle undermining of leadership and establishment of competing loyalties. Robert Blake was clearly a formidable force within Reynolds Logistics, his opposition to Community Build, and Jack's appointment temporarily overruled, but certainly not abandoned. Jack arrived at his workshop intending to organize his tools and materials, before transitioning to Reynolds the following Monday. Inside, he found Mike Johnson waiting, concern evident in his expression. Heard you're going corporate, Mike said without preamble. That true, Jack nodded, explaining his new role with Reynolds Community Build. Mike listened with growing animation. That's perfect for you. Jack, construction training programs are exactly what this town needs. Mike had often lamented the shortage of qualified assistants in the plumbing trade. When you start recruiting, apprentices, send some my way. I'd be happy to help with the plumbing training. The enthusiastic support lifted Jack's spirits after the unsettling lunch with Robert. I'll definitely keep that in mind. But what about the Harrison renovation we discussed? I hate leaving you without a carpentry partner. Mike waved this off. Don't worry about that. Bill Sanders' nephew just moved back to town, journeyman carpenter, looking for work. We'll manage. And their conversation turned to practical matters, which tools Jack would need at Reynolds versus what he might sell or store, how to handle the transfer of ongoing client relationships, and the logistics of shifting from independent contractor to corporate employee status. It's a big change, Mike acknowledged as they finished sorting through equipment. But a good one, I think. You've been running yourself ragged trying to keep afloat since Sarah died. This could give you and Tyler some stability. If I can navigate the corporate politics, Jack murmured, then found himself explaining his lunch with Robert and the undercurrents he'd sensed. Mike whistled low. Office politics make construction site disputes look straightforward. Just watch your back, man. Guys like that play chess while the rest of us are playing checkers. After Mike left, Jack continued organizing his workshop, each tool representing years of craftsmanship and independent work. Packing some into storage containers felt symbolic, closing a chapter of his life that had defined him for decades. As evening approached, Jack called Kate, wanting to inform her about his lunch with Robert before beginning his official role. Her assistant put him through immediately. Jack, is everything all right? Kate sounded concerned by the unexpected call. Everything's fine. I just wanted to let you know I had lunch with Robert Blake today. A beat of silence. I see. His invitation? Yes, he presented it as a welcome to Reynolds and an offer to help me navigate corporate culture. How thoughtful of him. Kate's tone suggested she found it anything but. And what guidance did Robert share? Jack hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. He gave me some company history, his version anyway. I'm sure he did, Kate sighed. Jack, I should have warned you that Robert might approach you directly. He's protective of his influence within Reynolds. Having a new director reporting directly to me, rather than through his operations division, disrupts the power structure he's comfortable with. He implied that community build might face additional board scrutiny regarding metrics and outcomes. That's Robert's typical approach, appears supportive while establishing conditions difficult to meet. Kate's voice hardened. The board approved our parameters yesterday. Any changes would require another vote. He also suggested that your interest in my candidacy might be based on personal, rather than professional considerations. A longer silence followed. Did he specifically mention our shared experiences as single parents? Yes. Classic Robert using personal information to create doubt and division. Kate's frustration was evident. Jack, I selected you because you're qualified for this specific role in ways that traditional corporate candidates aren't. Yes, I recognize and value our shared experiences as single parents, but that was context, not the deciding factor. I understand that, Jack assured her. I just thought you should know about the conversation. I appreciate your transparency. It's exactly why I trust you in this role. Kate paused. Robert and I have a complicated history that predates you. Don't let him make you a pawn in that dynamic. After ending the call, Jack collected Tyler from Mrs. Winters and headed home, his mind still processing the complex corporate environment he was about to enter. The practical construction aspects of his new role felt straightforward compared to navigating the personalities and politics. That evening, as Jack helped Tyler with homework, his phone chimed with a text from Kate. Forgot to mention there's a small welcome gathering for you Monday morning. Casual, just department heads you'll be working with. No need to prepare anything formal. The thoughtful heads-up was appreciated, another small indication of Kate's leadership style, practical, supportive, transparent. It contrasted sharply with Robert's approach of strategic information, sharing, and alliance building. As Jack tucked Tyler into bed later, his son asked drowsily, Dad, are you scared about your new job? The question caught Jack by surprise. What makes you ask that? You keep making your worried face, the one you had when we couldn't pay for the new water heater last year. Children noticed everything, Jack realized. I'm not scared exactly, just thinking about all the new things I'll need to learn. Tyler yawned widely. You'll be good at it, you're good at everything. The simple faith warmed Jack's heart. Not everything, buddy, but I'll try my best. Ms. Reynolds thinks you'll be good at it too. I could tell when she watched you talking to Hazel and Lily at the lake. She had that look teachers get when someone gives a really good answer in class. Jack smiled at the comparison. Get some sleep now. Big day tomorrow. We need to shop for your new school clothes this weekend before I start Monday. After Tyler drifted off, Jack sat on his porch swing, watching darkness settle over the neighborhood. In 3 days, he would walk into Reynolds Logistics as a corporate director responsible for a multi-million-dollar initiative with community-changing potential. The opportunity was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Robert Blake's warnings about Kate's leadership and the board's expectations competed with his own instinctive trust in Kate's vision. Somewhere between those perspectives lay a path forward that would allow Jack to maintain his integrity while adapting to corporate realities. The night breeze carried the scent of approaching rain, reminding Jack of projects left unfinished. Mrs. Donovan's ceiling, the Petersons' additional shelving, the bid for the downtown restaurant. Tomorrow he would begin systematically closing those loops, referring clients to trusted colleagues, ensuring his departure from independent contracting was as professional as his entry into corporate life. In the distance, thunder rumbled, a storm approaching, bringing change and cleansing rain. Jack remained on the porch swing until the first heavy drops fell, thinking about transformation opportunity and the courage required to step from the known into the unknown. His father had once told him that the true measure of craftsmanship wasn't perfection, but adaptation, the ability to work with unexpected grain, patterns, knots, or flaws to create something beautiful and functional despite imperfect materials. Perhaps corporate life would require similar skills, working with complicated personalities and situations to build something valuable regardless of challenges. Jack finally went inside as the rain intensified, resolved to bring the same authenticity and workmanship to his new role that had defined his carpentry career. Whatever politics and complications awaited at Reynolds Logistics, he would face them with the steadiness and integrity that had carried him through life's previous challenges. After all, at its core, building community was no different from building furniture. It required vision, skill, patience, and the understanding that the most meaningful creations outlast their creators, becoming part of a legacy that extends far beyond a single craftsman's hands.